Hey guys, and welcome to another brand new video. Now in this video we actually have a pretty crazy kind of topic going on and floating around all throughout today, where it does go and seem that other big game companies, other game makers, and as well as other big publishers are all now somewhat afraid of the brand new God of War Ragnarok and PlayStation 5 games coming out. So we're going to talk about this, talk about the overall industry impact, and the fact that it does kind of seem like other games are now seemingly canceling, delaying, and basically moving their launch dates to different times and different dates to make sure that they don't have to go and overlap with God of War Ragnarok when it comes out. So a lot of kind of crazy news to go talk about, and as well, you guys will stay tuned and enjoy. So if any of you guys are brand new, make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on, as well for the brand new PlayStation 5 giveaway on the channel itself. We have the Amazon links down below, we have the Target links down below, and the Twitter and Twitch stream. Would love you guys followed up on those. And let's go and talk about this. So we've had a chance now to kind of hype up, kind of know that we're going to have the release date soon, and I do think this is probably one of the highest tiered games out there. Now you guys can maybe agree or disagree, but at least in terms of all the games coming out in the next, I'd say 6 months, this is probably the most anticipated game, at least for me. Now, for other folks too as well, I'm sure it will be selling like hotcakes, especially on how good God of War, the very first one, did on even the PC re-release when it's been a few years old. And that was also pretty much an instant first, like, #1 seller. We've also been seeing really good numbers as well when it comes to Spider-Man on their re-release too. So we've been seeing some really good push and support when it comes to Sony and PlayStation games. But now we're hearing reports now too that other major fall releases that were scheduled and would be therefore planned for this upcoming fall and winter release dates are now actually being postponed, specifically because of God of War Ragnarok and the fact that a lot of these really big major game companies are afraid of having to go and compete with the game itself. Now, sometimes we have seen competition do very well. A good example is the Doom and Animal Crossing dual releases. There wasn't really too much of a cross overall, mainly because, one's more of a mature game, one's more Nintendo-based. But sometimes the dual releasing actually works out very well. So let's say like a game both do phenomenal and they both get good reviews, or there's sometimes big comparison articles, and sometimes it just makes sense. But with this one, I just think that this game is going to be too big of a deal and too big of an industry kind of push on how long it's taken to be released, on how well the marketing has been, and on top of that too, just on how long term the game actually has been in development for in a while. Same with the overall longevity of the game too, from back in the PS2 days. So a lot of people are expecting this game to be an extremely large scale, massive game. Game publishers don't want to compete with God of War Ragnarok. Journalist Greg Miller and Tim Geddes tell in their latest episode of the Kinda Funny Games podcast. So I just bring this on out because we've had so many big companies and so many big players in the industry go and kind of cite this and talk about this. Mainly because we have been seeing so many bits and pieces of leaks of information of how good the game's going to be, the PS5, everything. It's going to be a huge console seller too as well for anyone who hasn't gotten theirs yet. It's just everything put together is putting this game on such a massively high pedestal, especially because the 2018 version was a very well-made game and probably one of the top tier games out there when it first came out. So all these types of big kind of games are avoiding as much competition as they possibly can, and they're trying to avoid major releases at the same time that God of War Ragnarok is coming out. Tim Geddes in the Journal states, games are just afraid of God of War Ragnarok. No one wants to go out even next to him. I've had work calls with people telling me stuff, and I was shocked. We're dropping that, we're pushing this, and we're just going to go give God of War even more space. Now, this is kind of an obvious kind of saying when it comes to games. If you have a very widespread game that pretty much everyone's going to be talking about, it is something that does affect the game industry. A good example to note is that, let's say you have two major games coming out. I'll maybe use the same Doom and Animal Crossing example because it was the same day. When you have, say, people doing these now reviews and analytics of it, that's a big thing, is that time and analysts and basically people getting this first impression on games only have so long of a window. That means that you literally, if there's two major big games and they both take multiple hours to play through, you have to go and decide. This goes also same for YouTube Let's Players, YouTube reviewers. Twitch streamers especially have to decide on how to go and spread their time on what they want to stream. I've done a lot of Twitch streams where there's been games where 3 games in a row all come out, and you almost have to go and balance on which one you want to focus on, because sometimes those games take 10, 15, 20 hours to beat, and you just physically, literally cannot go play all 3 in the same day. So that is a big factor too, because if you're #1 on Twitch with millions of daily users, that is a huge promotion. When you have really big folks like Jacksepticeye or PewDiePie's or whoever plays games nowadays, the Rad Brad, etc., if they're not also playing that game day one, they could also be up to potentially millions upon millions of impressions you're missing out on. So that also is in the overall industry where you have people who are doing reviews. Sometimes you have the top sellers, which we'll talk about for Code of Lamb. This has actually been kind of popping off too as well. So if you're on the front page of Steam, you're on the front page of PlayStation stores, you're kind of being showcased pretty heavily, there is an extra bit of basically big media attention. And when it comes to a game like God of War Ragnarok, which is also big on the PlayStation 5 focus, there is going to be a massive media push. Pre-releases, game trailers, people trying their best to be the first one to go beat the game, tips and tricks, and everything tied into the game itself is a massive understatement. And this will be taking a lot of other attention away from other various big games. And that kind of also ties into other games as well. So Getty's did not name specific games, but the conversation began with a postponement of Marvel's Midnight Suns. The game, which was previously scheduled for release on October 7th, a month before the release of God of War Ragnarok, has actually now at this point been pushed back indefinitely. As well, I've also been seeing some other games. This may not fully be one-to-one tied into God of War Ragnarok release dates, but we have been seeing this a lot. A good example is, say, Starfield, that was supposed to be due out in November. Now it will be actually fully released in 2023. However, the release date of Starfield was changed even before the technical release date of God of War. But this also ties into that we'll probably be even seeing a few slight adjustments, or some of these internal big meetings might be like, hey, this game's going to come out 3 days, 4 days, 5 days after God of War Ragnarok comes out. Are we still expecting it to do well? Do we have to bump up marketing? Should we postpone it? And go from there. So basically, on top of this too, a lot of these developers are on top of this. A lot of developers are scared about this, but there is thankfully some other games too that are coming out regardless. A good example is even the Ubisoft's pirate game, Skull and Bones, which is still going to be set for a release on November 8th, just 1 day before God of War Ragnarok. But now I feel like if I was one of those bigger game industry folks, I would probably be someone who's trying their best to go and position this maybe, let's say, 2-3 weeks after, or a few weeks before. I feel like doing a game 1 day before, kind of weird. I feel like trying to have a really big major release in the same even 2-week window also is kind of rough. And it's always bothered me, like I said, as a Twitch streamer, because sometimes you'll have 3 massive big games that are all released on the same date, and then for some odd reason, then there's nothing else coming out for another 2 or 3 weeks, which is just awkward because, well, why couldn't they just release the game a week later and make it so much easier, on top of that. But this is kind of cool to go and see that so many folks are putting so much respect on the God of War Ragnarok name, and as well with everyone else on top of it. And so it kind of goes and ties into that sometimes, even though these big delays might have issues, the big Cult of Lamb review has actually been doing phenomenally well when it comes to games and indie games, etc., etc. I'll probably even be checking this myself out on the Twitch soon. And this does sometimes have those big numbers because this actually has been beaten and beating, I believe, Spider-Man, the PC version, which that alone is very impressive to go and see on how much media and hype and attention can go and affect a game. Now, this is a very, very strange occurrence because it is more on the indie side, although it is backed by Devolver Digital, which is a big game publisher, but just kind of goes to show that you don't always 100% have to be on top of a game and time release dates to see how it kind of plays on out. But we've had a lot of folks out here saying on how well this game has been on top of this and how well games in general as a whole can still do. So while a lot of big games may want to be competing with God of War Ragnarok, you still could actually have a game weasel its way on in and do phenomenal either way. And on top of this too, with a lot of folks, we've been seeing a lot more comments where people are saying stuff like Nintendo, so making comments and bringing stuff up too as well. We're seeing Redfall and Starfield also being scared about it too on top of this. And I think a lot of folks are just kind of putting a lot of respect, as I mentioned, on the Ragnarok release date. And I do think this game is going to kind of break the internet. I think it's going to do phenomenally well on game sales. And the one only last thing I wish they would do as I'm surprised that they actually don't have a individual PlayStation console, how they do it with Horizon right now, for that game. So hopefully they'll do that in the near future. So make sure you guys give me your thoughts and comments down below. Are you guys thinking that God of War Ragnarok is going to be a big console seller and big kind of industry breaker or not? Leave your thoughts and comments down below. As well, like I said, check out Cult of Lamb if you guys want to. I've heard some very good things about it so far. Make sure you guys are subscribed with the notifications on as well for the brand new PlayStation 5 giveaway. Amazon links down below for the PS5 digital console controller. Twitter and Twitch stream down below. The Target links down below. And of course, leave a like and your thoughts down below.